All right. Good morning, Teach Better family. I'm here with I got Dr. Neil Gupta, I got Ray Hewart, I got Hedrick Nichols, I've got Chris Madsen. We're here to just talk about some of the stuff that's been going on and hopefully support you in some way as you prepare to have potentially lots of conversations with both colleagues and family members and students and difficult conversations. We're here to answer questions. We're going to share what's going on in all these educators' classrooms and buildings today as well, and answer any questions you might have. So stick with us. We'll be right back. All right. Good morning. It's good to see you all. Thanks for jumping on this morning and joining us. Neil, good to see you. Hedrick, always great to see you. I'm not sure what she's doing over there, but it's great to see you. And Chris Madsen making only his second live stream debut. But appreciate you being here, brother. Really just wanted to, we wanted to come on and just be here for anyone watching to chat through and discuss, the events of yesterday and what may continue on today. We'll see where things are at right now and stuff. But Ray, what do you got? I feel like you want to chime in there.
I did just want to preface, we're having a few issues with StreamYard, so we'd love for you guys to comment, say hi, interact with this video.
Yeah, let us know.
If for some reason we're not seeing it, we're going to try and check the comments on our phones because StreamYard's acting funny this morning. But I just want to give that little caveat as people jump in and say good morning and say hello. Jeff, would it be helpful if we all went around and said a little bit about our roles in education?
If we could, I'd really love to. Yeah, I'd love to go around, have everyone just introduce themselves, and then I think after that, I'd really like to go around and just sort of get everyone's sort of initial thoughts where your head is right now going into it. I am seeing comments, so it does look like, at least on Facebook, Kylie just came through, so good morning, Kylie. So, Neil, you want to start us off? Just let anyone who isn't connected with you, let them know who you are, what your role in education is, where you're at.
Yeah, sure. So good morning, everybody. My name is Neil Gupta. I get to serve as our Director of Secondary Education in Worthington Schools. That's a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. It's a title that means I basically oversee the middle schools and high schools that are secondary programs and what's happening. And so obviously this conversation is important. I'm glad that there's people that are viewing this. When I got the email from Jeff yesterday that this was coming on, I thought it was timely because, we all sat around last night, I think kind of with different emotions and reactions. And then I think there was a point of okay, now how do we move to a place of action? And so it was good to have this moment for us to be able to share ideas and just talk and sometimes just be with each other.
Ray, do you want to, just in case anyone doesn't know who you are?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Ray Hewart. I'm currently a full-time 6th grade math teacher. I have 150 sixth graders, as well as I'm a part of the Teach Better team. So very, very, very happy to be here and thrilled to see so many of you commenting in the comments. We really wanted to be available for all of you, and you guys are definitely showing up. We love you guys.
Hedrick?
Hedrick Nichols. I am in North Texas, Arlington, right in view of Cowboy Stadium. I teach 186 7th graders ed technology and design. And I'm also an author and the host of Small Bites, a YouTube series on equity. And glad to be here to share some thoughts and processing from yesterday.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm Chris. I'm a secondary high school teacher, social sciences, and also a digital literacy coach, tech coach in the building. Teach in northwestern Illinois. Just excited to kind of be here and talk through. We're focused this year on a lot of civil discourse. And so it was kind of a perfect moment to jump on this live stream and kind of listen to the audience and go from there. So a lot of important conversations today are going to happen all over the country, probably in school. And it's important to, obviously support those conversations and really, really have those meaningful connections and conversations with our students.
I'm Jeff Gargas. I work as the COO of the Teach Better team. Just, happy to be here. Last night our team came together, putting together a lot of resources that we're going to be putting out and just saying we need to do something. We need to try and support however we can, because the majority of our team are classroom teachers that are preparing for the same conversations this morning and stuff too. And So I shot Ray a message. I said, "Hey, what do you think about going live?" And she responded basically with a graphic telling everyone we were going live. So, and then I reached out to Hedrick, and she said, "Yes, I'm there." And Chris said, "Hey, I'd really like to be a part of that." And then Neil replied to an email that we sent out last night, and fortunately he was available as well. So go ahead, Ray.
I did want to say, it's interesting with when you're looking at the Teach Better team, like so many of you that got Jeff's email yesterday responded, and our team kind of reacted the same way. Everyone was watching the news, and it was Becky Schexer, who's on our team, who kind of just posted a message in our private, Teach Better team communication thread, and was like, I think we need to do something. And honestly, guys, it spiraled all night. We like the conversation, the dialogue, the resources,
still this morning.
And still this morning. And I think that really is a small scale of what we've seen from our larger Teach Better family is people saying, wow, there's an element of shock. There's an element of need to discuss and get support. And then it's all these different spiraling conversations of people saying, how can I help you? What are you going to do? How can I help you? What's the plan? And I think that that's kind of the beauty of this discussion that we're going to be facilitating here for the next hour or so is really just wanting to make sure that you're a part of that discussion. You're a part of, trying to find the right language to use with students and everything in between. So just a little shout out to all of you who not only are on our listserv and responded to Jeff's email initially yesterday, but those of you who keep interacting with us on social media, we really believe in community, especially during times like this. So welcome to the conversation, and please comment with your thoughts, because we'd love to facilitate further conversation, not only with people here, but also those of you watching.
So I'd really love to just sort of get the initial thoughts, like where are you at this morning? Where were you at last night? Mentally, where are you at this morning? Hedrick, I'm going to go to you first. How are you feeling this morning? What's going through your head? How are you planning to have conversations, or how have you already had conversations? And, sort of where are you at right now?
I posted last night and began to post this morning. I think if you teach if you teach a population of students of color, you should probably be prepared, because if they are older than 10, they've already internalized the lack of value that this country places on Black and brown bodies. And that sounds harsh, but unless you stood in a 6th grade class and watched an 11-year-old, I've taught through several shootings. I've taught through several. When the protest, before Black Lives Matter was a thing, I've taught kids. During, when at its inception, I've taught kids, and those kids say things. I remember the first time I heard it, and he said, "I don't know why everybody's so freaking out. It's not like they care about us anyway. They always shoot us first." And that kind of thing. When you hear that, the worst thing I think a teacher can do, and that's one thing. Let's say, if you don't, I'm a mother of a Black son. I am a Black person, so this is a part of my reality. If this is not your reality, the one thing I just want to say to everybody who's watching is, please do not say, "Oh no, honey, that's not true," because it is. It is historically true, and it is. I mean, the big thing that I think from the Black community we've seen is that what the presence looked like on Capitol Hill during the Black Lives Matter protests in summer, and had Black people walked through or even breached the Capitol grounds, it would have looked very different. There would have been carnage. And that's something that is, again, if this is not your reality, it sounds alarmist. It sounds, oh God, here we go with the race card. It sounds like all of those things. And I can get it, because if it's not your reality, it's just not your reality. But if you teach Black and brown students and they say something like that, I just hope that everyone will be available to see that as a real truth for us. And to be able to meet that with, "That breaks my heart. I'm sorry. I am working to make it better," because that's all you can do, is you can work to make it better.
Chris, where are you at right now? Where's you reached out last night saying that you want to be a part of this, you want to be here. I know, everyone on the team was impacted, was thinking through. I just really want to know where your head was at last night. Where are you at this morning as you're preparing to interact with students and colleagues and have conversations around everything?
Yeah, I think Hedrick hit the nail on the head with, wanting your students to be vocal and voice their thoughts and their opinions and letting the conversation kind of go from there. I think a lot of times as teachers, we have a lot of thoughts of our own and we want to kind of share what we're thinking with. And I think it's important to do so, but letting them kind of start that conversation, which can be hard and difficult because sometimes they don't want to, but that's so much more authentic. And I mentioned it before. We went into this school year, obviously, in a pandemic and with a lot of situations, but our department, being social studies, led by our division leader, who's awesome, he really challenged us to have those difficult conversations. And so we did a lot of kind of workshopping and talking about those things. And it started off, I teach a revolutions class, so we have a lot of difficult conversations in that class, but it's a great, authentic kind of curriculum where we look at revolutions throughout history, and then U.S. history, where you have a ton of topics. We debate, like the one of the bigger debates earlier this year was the Civil War monuments and that kind of discussion. And it was amazing to hear students share in a productive and a very, very kind of, I would say, empathetic manner. And everyone was listening to that. So today's going to be a very similar day, I think, where I'm going to let the students, share what they saw, share what they kind of heard, and we'll let the conversation go from there. But I want them to be heard, and I want to have that, that tough conversation with them, because we're seeing history in front of us right now, and it's a really missed opportunity if we just move on with our curriculum because it's the safe space. And I know it's hard for some educators to want to, take up those conversations. It's not easy. So hopefully we can be here to talk through that and encourage those conversations.
Yeah, I really like, Chris, that you've talked, your leadership has supported you in kind of having dialogue with your colleagues so that you can have productive dialogue with students. Neil, I mean, you're an educational leader in your district. Have you seen that type of facilitation happening? Do you think that that's appropriate to have? Where's your mindset on all that?
Yeah, so both Chris and Hedrick are hitting it right on. In our district, same thing as she said before, Black Lives Matter. For us, we've been working on diversity, equity, inclusion for the past 3 years. And so I've been proud of us. We've been digging into the books, and it started out very uncomfortable of conversations. We could read the book silently, but then when it got to conversations with our leadership team, our principals together, we had to, really slowly go into this conversation. We're a very white administrative team. And so to try to talk about it from what the other lens, even though I believe that their heart is there, was uncomfortable for them. But it took time to say, look, you don't have, let you embrace it. Go talk to families, go talk to others, learn perspectives, listen. And I think that we're much better poised in that way. I will say. And so Chris is saying, gosh, I'm coming in from a revolutionary background. I'm a social studies teacher, and I came from a math background. And I would be freaking out right now if I had my first period class coming in about an hour. And my tendency would be, I want to teach math. Like, I don't want to talk about this. I have personal feelings about this, but I don't know how to navigate the waters. But, Hedrick and I have been on a couple webinars now about diversity, equity, race, and this idea of, and she said it back, I think in June, and you blew my mind when you said, this isn't going away. Don't kind of check the box on this thing and think that you're going to solve this in the fall. And so if we're not nimble to say that, these conversations are important, put the curriculum aside of what you think the standards are supposed to be. Hedrick said, listen. Chris, you both of you said, listen to our kids. But I think the other thing I'll say is there's a lot of miscommunication that's out there. There's a lot of fake news. And I think that it's important as educators that we don't shy away from helping to kind of create that. We have to walk the line on, sharing our personal beliefs or anything like that. But that doesn't mean that we can't call out something that's erroneous.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jeff, when you reached out saying that this was something that we should put together, I did think it was a great idea. But to be completely transparent, I was like, I am a math teacher. I don't know what I'm going to say. And I just kind of joined this live stream being like, I just want to ask all the questions that I kind of think some people in our community might have, because I don't feel like I have any answers, but any guidance would be helpful. And I know that you guys, we're all going to carry different perspectives. Every community is different, but we all know that we want to do what's right for students, and we all want to see voices represented in all areas. I think a lot of the concern, kind of, Neil, of what you discussed is this idea of, I have students coming to my class in an hour and I don't really know what I'm saying to them. And on the flip side, because I'm in a middle school, I have the same class. I teach the same class multiple times throughout the day. So do I offer this discussion in the morning? And is that something all teachers are going to do? And then later throughout the day, am I just like beating a dead horse, forcing kids to talk about this all day? And I think that there's some educators here that are like, I want to create a space to discuss, but I'm nervous about like how much time I should take, what the response should be if I get pushback, like how all that stuff works. Do you guys have any maybe like simple but really important tips for an educator saying, I'm nervous, I'm uncomfortable? Dave Schmidt's comment was like, we may be uncomfortable, but we should be. And then also like, but I want to do it. So can you what are the tips that I should really keep an eye out for, and strategies I should be using?
Ray, I know for me, what I always plan for first period to get hit in the face with whatever. You know what I mean? Moms have the news on in the morning. Dad's got the news on the radio station. So I am fully armor on. Let's do this, because I know that first period I'm going to get hit with it. But I asked. I said, hey guys, yesterday was crazy. Did y'all see what was going on in the news? And then, I figure it out, because it depends really on what they say. Having said that, I teach in a district in Texas that is supportive of, we have a real intentional policies around diversity and inclusion. The first email I'm going to get is going to be a 10-paragraph email from our district superintendent talking about in support of, whatever. And a lot of people don't have that. Teachers have gotten fired and put on leave because they had, rainbow flags or Black Lives Matter on a little thingy in their Bitmoji classrooms, which sounds ridiculous, but this is the reality here where I live, and in a lot of places in Texas it is. 3 things I'd like to remember is, 1, there's character. I think Dave said it in the chat. Character is character. So before you don't have to talk about politics. If you have a lot of teachers live in a district where you're supposed to stick to the curriculum, period. And that's easy to do because character building is a part of everybody. There's a TEK or a standard about communication in everybody's content. So you can talk about character, talk about, hey, if your 2 friends are having a fight, is it better to say, yeah, fight? Or is it better to say, hey guys, let's discuss this? That has nothing to do with politics at all. Number 2, you can talk about sportsmanship, from a PE teachers out there, shout out. I think I saw one here in the chat. Yep. You can simply say, let's talk about sportsmanship. Let's put the ball down and let's talk about sportsmanship. Hey, did y'all see what happened in the NBA last night? Yeah, they played. Yeah, it was crazy, right? But what about sportsmanship? What happens when a sore loser, starts ripping up the game equipment? Is that cool? It's not cool, is it? And the other thing is that violence is always wrong. And that's one thing that mostly both sides agree on. Often we only agree on it when it's the quote unquote other side. But violence is never wrong. We have a constitution, we have all of these things in place, we have a democracy, and that. And I know, there's one little 4th thing, and that's media. And this is for people who teach ELA, who teach history, who teach media literacy, who teach those kinds of courses that have some freedom. All sides media really does talk about whatever you look at in the media. You're generally looking to confirm what you already believe. It's called confirmation bias. And that's human, I get that. But you should be able to disprove what you believe by looking at what the other side is writing and be open to the fact that you just really may not know everything. And so if you have those kind of courses where you do have the freedom to discuss this, you can talk about the fact that the Supreme Court has already made some decisions. All of the lower courts have already made some decisions. The AD has already said there's no widespread sweeping fraud. So in situations where you have the opportunity, you can just look at those as simple media literacy things. Whether you believe them, you can look at, let's look at QAnon sources. Let's look at CNN sources. Let's look at WAPO. Let's look at different sources And don't push your conclusion, whichever thing you believe. Let kids come to their own conclusion. But the important thing is not about that. It's not that they come to a certain conclusion. It's that they are able to process different kinds of media as having bias, and to know that. And even if you only sow a seed and you think, okay, well, I don't know, I don't agree with you, but that's okay. As long as we can look at each other and see that there are different sides being presented. Some may be straight facts. The Supreme Court threw this out. Some may be a little more gray, and be able to look at it and think about it. Oh, okay, well, this is black and white. This is gray. This is, I don't know. And saying I don't know is really okay. I think those are the 3 most powerful words any educator can use is, I don't know. Let's find out together.
Hedrick, that was incredible. I just want to touch on that because I was just flooded with DMs and emails and such last night asking, what do I do? My district sent out an email already saying that we need to just teach the curriculum, cut it, don't say it. And you just dropped so many different tips on how you can address it without being political, without pushing your agenda, or not your agenda, I'm sorry, your personal beliefs or. And I love how you said it's not about getting them to a certain point or a certain agreement. It's about getting them to be able to process it. And another comment, Ray, obviously the comments are already confirming like the idea of like how much time do I put in, how do I do this? I think Hedrick and Chris really both really touched on that with the idea of listening. So my thoughts are going through as you were talking about like multiple periods, seeing them is you're going to see them first, but then they're going to go somewhere else. They're going to interact with other people, right? And they may have new questions. They may have new anger. They may have new confusion. So I think just continuing to listen to them and let them tell you whether we need to address it again the second time we meet, because maybe we don't. Maybe they're processed and you can get into content. Maybe that second time the content's going to help them chill. But then the last time you see them, maybe we do got to get back to it because now they've had all day to maybe new things have happened. They've had more conversations and now they're like, oh, I really need to know what Ms. Hewitt's thinking right now because now I'm confused. Now I'm upset, whatever. So that was incredible advice there, Hedrick, and Ray. Great question to put on because everyone was asking the same. So
yeah, can I bring out what you just said too? If your kids don't want to talk about it, that is so okay. Maybe they've processed it. They've had a great conversation. They're good. It's okay. I know, but is there anything you want to talk about?
Don't do that.
Okay, I love it. Neil, go ahead.
No, I mean, it just piggybacks off that idea of like, I mean, there's so many dimensions to this, right? Like when you said like, what happened? Well, first, when you heard it, you were in shock, right? Of the initial news. And then the complexity of all the different angles that this takes on. And Jeff, to your point, I think as the day progresses today, not only is there going to be more questions and conversations, but the news is going to continue happening, that's actually happening that may layer into that. So as a district person, I'm not suggesting those districts are getting the emails from the district leaders that are saying teach the curriculum, and we're not saying that in my district at least. But professionally, I'm not saying defy them. Don't do that. But go back and push on those administrators to say, look, this is the curriculum. This is the time. And if we don't do it today, we've got to have a conversation about. And I hate to say the next time. The next time something happens, we have to be agile and flexible and armored enough to be able to have these conversations because our kids want to do that. We have to understand that to Hedrick's point, if they don't want to maybe talk about it, it could be from a trauma-informed approach. Maybe there's some experiences. Somebody died yesterday. So, it just comes to this fact that like, it was horrific. If you saw some of the scenes that occurred right there that could let people know, do they feel safe? Do they feel like everything's going to be okay? And again, we have to bring that. There was a point where at some point we have to model, and this idea of both I don't know and also like, hey guys, this is uncomfortable for me to have a conversation about. Like Ray, when you were saying a strategy, I think it's okay to be vulnerable in front of them to say, look, I'm feeling very awkward about this conversation. I'm not sure how to have this in a way that helps to facilitate this in the proper way where we're actually talking about the issue and not attacking people. But we have to learn how to do that. That's a training we have to have with our staff.
I think that's a huge point, Neil. Like, and Hedrick said too, like the I don't know. Like, I think so many people are or educators are worried that they have to have the answers. You don't have to have the answers, right? And I love how you said, so one of the best answers is actually, I don't know. Let's talk through it. Because here's the fact of the matter is, you're going to have some students who are here on this issue or and everything that happened, and some people that are hearing very different things at home that are coming with very different things. So there is no right answer to come into it with it, right? There's just the offer an opportunity for them to process and to talk through it and to figure out, like Hedger said, get them to the point of process of where they can see each other if they happen to be disagreeing, because maybe their households disagree, and they view things differently, or the kids that maybe aren't even as aware because maybe their family just wasn't on media last night or didn't pay or turned it off because they just didn't want to think about it. So there is no right. It's all about the listening and doing that. I had a teacher reach out. We had one reach out last night that particularly said, like, their district leader said, if it's brought up, cover it quickly, factually, and move on. And she was like really struggling with it. She's actually just outside of DC, so like it's in their backyard. And I told her, I said, well, I would never encourage anything that would put your job at jeopardy, but I will say this: quickly is a broad term. So I said, and also curriculum, Neil, you said, I said curriculums, I reached out separately with her and said, curriculum is a broad term too. And I wish I would have said it the way you just said it, which is that this is the curriculum right now. But the thing was, I said, look, your students better than anyone does. You know what they need. Talk to them. You don't have to have the right answers, but you can cover it quickly in 8 hours. So.
And the comments are going crazy, guys. Like Neil, Hedrick.
Yeah, I haven't been bringing them up as much as we normally do, but yeah, you guys have
shared so much that not only people really appreciate like those tactical strategies that they're like, okay, not only am I getting reassurance that my feelings are appropriate, I also really appreciate that I'm taking this out of the political realm, and there is ways to talk about this without voicing my political opinions, which I know is so challenging for teachers that really do want to foster those discussions. I do have another silly question, but maybe it's another one that's now relevant that you've just provided us so many different ideas and strategies. Chris, I don't know, Hedrick, I don't know if you guys do this often, but I know a lot of educators right now are listening saying, yep, okay, I need to listen to my students. I'm going to focus on characteristics, and like all these strategies are so, so powerful. How do I facilitate that virtually? Like, is there a strategy where do I hop on my Zoom call today and say, hey, is there anything that we need to talk about? Hedrick, you really modeled like how to start that conversation well. I actually encourage people, you can rewind this video after we're done being live, pull some of those like one-liners to put in your back pocket today to use in an appropriate way with students. But then once you throw that out there, is it that they comment? Is it that they share their voice? Is there a tech resource I can use to kind of curate people's opinions to get a feel for the room? Is that a silly question? I don't know. But when you're talking about facilitating tough conversations, is there strategies that you suggest that allow everyone to have an equal voice, but also allow me as a teacher to manage a challenging topic already?
I mean, I think for like little things like a Padlet is super, or a Jamboard, or even just set up a Google Doc or Google Slides and say, hey, let's all kind of write through this, or you can insert pictures about what you're feeling. And so there's so many, those are my top 3 tools. I use Google Slides a lot just because it requires no prior knowledge. Jamboard is super easy. Padlet, put one up. You can literally have a free account. It'll give you 3 free Padlets, and you can put that up, put a link in your chat, in your Zoom chat, and say, hey, kids, if you have questions or thoughts, remind them that writing in an academic setting is the same as talking. We are school appropriate. We are respectful. Again, you get to reinforce those same character traits. But I don't care what you see adults doing. We practice a culture of respect for one another here, and that means that you can be critical, but you can't be mean-spirited. You can criticize the behavior, but you cannot criticize the person or the party or any of those kinds of things. Just reinforce those behaviors that you're teaching already, hopefully in your classroom. But yeah, Padlet.
Yeah, those are a bunch of good strategies. We use Padlet all the time. I saw Google Forms in the comments section. That's a great way to kind of pre-screen if you're worried about a tough conversation and you want to get a little bit of feedback ahead of time. I mean, we're all in the Zoom or Google Meets or whatever it might be nowadays. You can set your chat to just having the kids talk to you privately, and then you voice them if there's difficult conversations. We've done that, and obviously we've had a ton. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of these events this year where we've had to kind of practice these skills. And so I think we're better for it, like we've all talked about with these strategies. But yeah, and Ray, you had kind of talked about how do you get this thing started sometimes, and talk about keeping it within your curriculum. I love someone had the comment of the this is the lens we view our curriculum through. I love that. And just start with a picture from yesterday and just share that picture and say, what do you guys see in this photo first? And then just break it down from that standpoint. And you'll kind of let students, almost like we talked about with a layer, just kind of, you know, they're not going to be comfortable jumping in the deep end probably right away either, just as most teachers aren't. So having that kind of, like you said, kind of warm up or igniter to that kind of idea is really important. But at the end of the day, I love the idea of kind of having a place to document as well. The Google Slides idea was great, or the Google Doc. Then you can look back and say, how did we get to this perspective? And you can kind of teach students how to create perspectives, and that leads to that media strategy, viewing sources, and all those things. So that was awesome.
Collecting that information is all data as well that can be shared with your colleagues and your admin team, your leadership team, for some of those conversations that Neil talked about with the, unfortunately, next time, can we be better prepared? Can we be more aware of where our students may be? So good examples there.
I'll just jump to say, like, you know, the idea of self-reflection, like the idea of giving space for processing is also important. I think that, again, and, you know, this kind of goes to our Gen Z students that, you know, are watching the news. They're inundated with information. There's total constant, even facilitating it on a Zoom today, the ability to slow down and self-reflect and in quietness and be like, but it might be facilitated to, like, I need you to get out a piece of paper, like actual paper, not typing. And I want you to, like, and it might be writing, but it could be like just drawing. It could be just something like that. And it could be kind of, how are you feeling right now? What do you think right now? What do you think about the future? And you know, Hedrick and then Ray, you said it importantly. And so again, with my administrative hat on, our parents might be thinking, are they teaching political things with our kids, or doing whatever, you know? So again, I think an email sent home is, we talked about the behaviors. We focused on the behaviors of what was happening, not the political stuff. I mean, in Self-Paced class, yeah, go for it, and that kind of stuff. And if it comes up in the other places, but, you know, to kind of call out, because if there's that angry parent email that comes through to say, did you? And I'll say, no, we talked about the behaviors that happened. That's kind of what our focus was on in this context of what was happening in the political part. But I think that those things are going to be important, not to just kind of wait for something to happen, but it's going to happen.
I think I'm really glad you went there, Neil, because I was actually going to try to take us there, because one of the replies to the email that I got last night was asking about that, of not necessarily ask, but just sort of vent and worry of, if it does come up and I talk about it, what do the kids take home? What do parents think? So I think that the idea of, if it comes up and you talk, because again, like Hedrick said, and we said, like, if they don't want to talk about it, you don't need to talk about it. If they do and you have the discussions, I think documenting that and sharing that home to your stakeholders of, hey, just so you're aware, if this did come up, you know, around what happened at the Capitol, this is what we talked about. This is how we handled it. You know, it's important for me not to push my beliefs on anything. We didn't go there, but we talked about the behavior. We talked about how it connects with, you know, our content, however that might be. I think that's really, really, really important there as well.
And you're touching on needing to be, like, proactive versus reactive. You know, I had a situation this right before winter break where something happened in my classroom. I didn't see it really as a big deal. I handled it with my students. And then the parent reached out within 48 hours and was like, I'm kind of bothered that I didn't get communication that this occurred. And the reality is that now, at that point in time, now I'm being reactive. So if you can plan your time today to not only facilitate strong discussion and bring perspective to students today, you also need to be proactive in supporting your families to support the student that had those conversations today, so they know the lens that was communicated. And we all know that, you know, it's like you're playing telephone. If you're not proactive, it's just going to be a middle schooler, an elementary student, a high school student going back and be like, oh yeah, we talked about this. In the same capacity, when you ask a child, what did you at school today? And they're like, nothing. And you know that's not true. So if you're able to be proactive and say, hey, we did discuss this, these are the types of things that were discussed, you're kind of giving your parents information in their toolbox to either facilitate or foster further discussion with their children later in that day. And that's really important, especially as we're all working at home. It's a very different environment we're living in right now.
You're also communicating with them versus just responding to potential criticism. Because if I feel the need as a parent to reach out to you because I'm upset about something, I'm worried about something, like at that point, I'm not saying it's too late, but it might be too late in the sense of now when you reply to me, I'm reading your information, which might be great, thoughtful, transparent information. I'm reading it very differently. Versus if you let me know before I have a chance to have that conversation that either confuses me, worries me, angers me, whatever it might be. If I've received that from you, like I said, right now I have that context, I have that info for when my child comes home, and I can be like, okay, but like, well, now that's not saying that I might still not get worried, angry, whatever in email. But if you communicate that because I emailed you versus because you felt it important and it's important to me, that's going to have a very bad effect potentially on how I receive that information. So,
yeah.
One thing.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, I think it's perfect. And just the intention behind the conversation. I think that's the key.
Yes.
I know not every department maybe has the opportunity. We actually, like I said, we put it in our syllabus at the start of the year and say, when we talk about these topics, we're not talking about them for the sake of political views or those things. That will come up naturally, but we're going at it from what is the purpose of bringing up this topic and what do we want students to really get out of this? Is it, like you guys said, is it diving into bias or things like that? But you put that with it and you give that intentionality. It opens up a lot of good conversation for those who might, and again, let's be real. Like we were teaching obviously during the election this year. There's a lot of stuff going on at that time. And I remember having parents in the kitchen on the Zoom call right behind you. And you're like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't say this wrong. I hope I don't trip it up. And when you have that, wait, what's my intention of this conversation? And you can reiterate that, it takes a lot of that stress and a lot of that kind of that intensity away from things, and it really just it makes it educational, and that's the whole point of it, right? It's just to be educational and to kind of help steer students.
Really great point.
Chris, I got a question. Not that like I'm going to use the word rules, which I whatever, but like because you have this background, what would you say to any teacher as far as like if you're going to go into this conversation, what are the ground rules so that we stay on? How do you set things up? What are some of the things that you would say at the beginning before we go into this conversation? I allow you to talk. I need you to make sure we uphold these 5 things or whatever. I don't know what that is, but what are some of those things?
Yeah, and it depends on the class, right? Whether you have seniors, freshmen, K through 12, obviously the whole audience can be different when you're answering and going over these tough conversations. I think the number one thing that we can do as educators, and you already hit on that, is self-reflect before you have the conversation. Not to say that we are biased, but we do naturally come in the classroom with bias. And so we need to make sure we identify that to avoid any issues up front, then look at things from an academic standpoint and say, hey, here's the situation, here's the brass facts. If I'm going to share anything with students, it needs to be along those lines. I need to know what sources I'm using, things like that. And then I think you have to kind of self-reflect ahead of time. And like Ray was saying, be proactive in terms of what could go wrong. I don't want to always think worst case situation, but if you think that way, you can almost proactively block it out. And those are the things that then you can listen and say, hey, we're going to have this conversation. Let's say 10 minutes before class, I really thought about all the worst case situations. You can make the standards of the conversation, make sure it never gets to that point. Hey, if you get heated during the conversation, you get frustrated, I don't want you to share it off in front of the whole class. Email me separately and I'll walk you through that, because then you're avoiding a blow up. And right now with Zoom, you have no control over if someone wants to kind of, voice that opinion, and they should, but they also are learning how to do it. I mean, as adults, we're constantly learning how to do that proactively and productively and respectfully. So I think a lot of it comes up to that metacognition and that kind of that pre-screening and reflection.
I think Hedrick hit on a good point earlier of laying out like, hey, it doesn't matter what we're talking about in this classroom. We're respectful to each other. Whether we're typing or speaking, we don't attack. Like again, we don't attack people. We can talk about the actions or the events, but we don't attack the people, the party, that type of stuff. So I think laying down those ground rules that you would in any kind of discussion, whether virtually or not, I think is really important. I want to bring from a different angle, and a few people have tweeted about this, have mentioned things. A couple of the replies, the emails and stuff, or along these lines, is that these conversations that are potentially most likely, however you want to look at it, coming up and around us today, are not just with students. We've talked a little bit about stakeholder side too, but also your colleagues. And so I'd love to hear sort of your perspective on. I mean, you know who you work with. You know who, you probably have a pretty good idea of what your colleagues are going to potentially bring it up or not, and how they might be responding, how they might not. But sort of, I'd love to hear where you're all at on that. Is how are you either looking to facilitate conversations, or are you looking, or just how you're thinking through that? What are the conversations going to be amongst our staff, whether we're virtual and it's in a chat room, or if we're in school and it's, randomly in the hallway or text messaging or whatever. But so I don't know who wants to jump in first on that, but I'd love to hear that. We've had a couple comments, but again, last night on Twitter, a lot of talk of that as well about, hey, this has to be a conversation with our colleagues too. So who wants to?
I'll jump in there. We have to realize we are a deeply divided country. Deeply. There was. I don't remember, but I don't think there was any runaway race. You know what I mean? Where the country made a statement that most of us feel this way and some of us feel that way. We're just pretty much, we're really close to split down the middle. Today is not a day to have a conversation with your peers. That's my thought. You know what I mean? I can see you're really hot about it. It was a shocking occurrence, wasn't it? Let's let things cool off. Let's talk about it next week. Done. Today is just not the day. You don't want to be that person having a confrontation in the hallway. You should be able to tell your kids, you know what, kids? I'm not going to talk about politics. That's not what we do at our school. But here's the deal, guys. Adults have modeled some really poor behavior, and I want you to be in a space where I'm not going to do that. And then don't do that. You know what I mean? And purpose in your heart to not have those conversations until things have cooled off. No soup is eaten as hot as it's served. Just let it cool down. People are like, they got the news on, they're checking their phones. People are really up in arms. Now is not to have the conversation with someone, especially with someone who does not espouse the same views as you, period.
I 100% agree. I was texting with people that I knew was in alignment with my thinking last night. And I can tell you, there were some people that, even if I would have seen their name come across and I didn't see the text, I would have probably not wanted to read it. And I'm not sure I'm there today. And, I agree with you. There's a poem that says, there's a poem with the title, Tiny Little Eyes Are Watching, sort of thing. And I think that I don't know if I could go even, not just in the hallway, but into the teacher lounge, have a conversation and walk out and be ready to go for my kids. If I think about that, I've got to stay focused on my kids today. And, and then take that maybe, I don't know, into the weekend or whatever, but we just have to kind of be at that protective armor phase. It's emotional. It's not a coffee conversation where you can walk necessarily away and just agree to disagree. That's a cute phrase, but there's emotion that comes along with this that I don't think is, people may be ready yet. Even if you think you're ready, it may not be hey, let's have this agree to disagree conversation. It's probably not the best thing to do in our workplace.
I won't lie. I actually wholeheartedly agree. I feel like it's a moment where I'm kind of happy I'm virtual this week, because a lot of those natural conversations aren't happening in my world now. On the flip side, though, I came to the school that I work at now because of the people. And I wanted to work in this building because it was such a progressive, open-minded, dedicated, passionate staff. And on the flip side, while I think there's some beauty in being virtual and letting this settle before as a community we speak, in terms of, the community I work with and my colleagues, I do think that my building would be able to handle healthy dialogue around this, because the culture of my building does have that sense of mutual respect. We come from similar perspectives, right or wrong, more or less. And it's interesting because I think if we were in the building, we would end up talking about it. And I don't think that would necessarily be too harmful. But on the flip side, I really, really value that because we're virtual, maybe those conversations are better set for next week. So if you're an educator listening right now and you're like, No, I think that my colleagues could handle this conversation. I would just challenge you to take the perspective of, if you're having those conversations, we have to be approaching it similar to students, where again we focus on characteristics. It's not political, and it really is more conversational, related to what we've talked about with the class. And it's funny, Dana Kirby, who you just showed, that agreed. She works in my building, so it's interesting. So. Mm-hmm.
I think that's spot on. I think both sides of the perspective, it's all about your environment and context, right? Like when to have that conversation. It probably isn't right when you walk in the door and you see that that friend or colleague across the room that leans a different way than you do, and you're like, hey, probably don't want to start with that. I want to say good morning, and I want to say how are you doing, and to go from there. But if you're in a closed door meeting with your department and people are voicing those concerns, that's tough too, because sometimes you want to share in the room and go back and forth. But at the end of the day, like we had all said, you want to be able to, listen to them. And I think Hedrick said it earlier. I say this to my students all the time. I hear you. You guys got to be able to say, I hear you. I understand your point of view. And it's okay if I don't completely agree with it, but I hear you. And just stop the conversation there. I mean, a lot of times after that, nothing really comes out of it that we can benefit from. Once the person feels like they've been heard, they're happy enough with that. They don't need to hear, your counter advice on top of that, because then it's almost counterproductive as well.
Neil, just curious, with your leadership team and admin team are there discussions going on with how you're planning to support teachers, or is it fairly we're here for you kind of a feel, or are you putting out specific, I don't want to say guidelines, rules? I know you already said that's not the case, but are you sharing specific resources or anything like that you can share with us now, or?
Yeah, so actually I'm going to be jumping out in about 10 minutes because we have a district leadership team meeting. This morning, I just sent out a email. It's the article, and teaching tolerance is a great resource for different things. And they put out an article on May 18th, 2018. Now, they updated it yesterday, but the crux of it is when bad things happen, when bad things are happening. And it's a framework, right? It's a framework for things to think about. I don't think there's a silver bullet 5-step process that we're going to be putting out, but a series of thoughts that might happen. And again, from a K-12 district standpoint, it's going to look different. Just like Chris said, even in the high school, from freshmen to seniors, it can look different. And then by course and by feel of that teacher, that's if they feel uncomfortable. So I think it's just a lot of suggestions of things that they can look at to kind of, as fast as they can, as best as they can, and be able to kind of go that direction. But again, it may not be, if you kind of feel like, well, gosh, hey, 9 o'clock's coming and school starting, and so we missed out, and let's forget about it. I don't think this conversation is going to be gone tomorrow. So I encourage your teams to still get together, even if it's after school today, to say, okay, let's still archive and curate and, look at the Padlet type stuff and get that out to our staff for tomorrow then.
Yeah, because it goes, like you said it earlier, like this, it goes beyond today. It's preparing for, unfortunately, the next thing that brings up the same type of conversations. And you also talked, earlier mentioned, the news is still happening, right? It's going to happen at 9:10, and it's going to happen at 3:30. And we don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully nothing, violence or anything like that occurs, but things are going to continue to occur. People are going to say things that spark news articles and tweets that go viral and stuff. So yeah, this doesn't stop. You didn't miss it if you don't have something out right now. You didn't miss it if you don't have it out by 11 o'clock today or by the end of today. But that's one thing that we're doing. We're working on Live and Carry, working very diligently right now to take all the resources that our team was pulling together and that we're seeing all over Twitter and everyone. And so many people will reply. We had administrators replying last night to the email that was coming back to me saying, "Hey, here's the letter that I put out to my district. Please feel free to share it." So we're gonna be listing just a whole lot of links basically on a post and updating that regularly with that, just trying to get it out. And Carrie was, worried because she was planning for her class, and she's like, "What if I don't get it out right away?" I'm like, "Just get it out when we can get it out, because it's, like Dr. Gupta was saying, it doesn't stop if we miss it at by 9 o'clock." So I think it was a great point there.
Well, and I just want to give, I know this is silly, but like a special shout out, Carrie and Livia specifically are in the back of my mind, and Bella on our team in the back of my mind, texting at 12:30 last night, trying to get stuff out to our communities. And we're not the only ones doing that, guys. Every educator, every education organization, all districts, we all kind of had the same night last night. We were up so late trying to figure out how we can get things together, how we can be supportive. And teachers were doing the exact same thing, how they're going to do this for their students. And so as you're like kind of thinking through things today, this is a beautiful moment that people chose to really try and stay up and foster discussion and provide resources. So if you're struggling, if you're thinking right now, oh, this has been such a great conversation, this doesn't need to end here. You have a community of people that want to keep helping you brainstorm, want to keep supporting you. We want to share resources with you. And it's much larger than the people on this screen. It's so much larger than just people on the team. Like, we really do need to all come together and continue to not only have these discussions, but share ideas and resources. So thank you guys here for starting that conversation, because I know it needs to continue. And I want everybody to reach out to the specific people that they need to, that they can, to continue to get good resources and tools. So.
Last night was and it's continued all through the night into this morning, was another moment where I just consider myself so fortunate to be part of this community of educators all over, because last night they all came together and there was no longer, I'm in this school, you're in that school, we're in this district, they're this, that, whatever. It was, here's everything I have that might help someone with this, and multiple lists of different, Pear Duck is popping in my head of a list of resources and stuff that they put out, and districts sharing letters that we sent out to, that they sent out to their districts. People just sharing, hey, I found this was great. Hey, this really hit me when I read it and stuff. So, like Ray said, keep doing that. That's how we continue to be better.
And I know a lot of us need to head out to start these conversations in preparation for our class. I do want to give a little shout out. If those of you consider yourself leaders and you want to continue this conversation, we are having a mastermind session. It's not usually on Thursdays, but Dave Schmitto is going to facilitate a mastermind this morning. So if you have some time, in about 10 minutes here, we are going to kind of get some leaders together from around the world and hopefully continue to foster the conversation of supporting staff. So if you need that link or resource, please direct message or email one of us. We'd love to help.
Yes, that you can get that info all the time over at teachbetter.com/mastermind, but the automated email might not get to you quick enough. So, shoot an email to Jeff@teachbetter.com or Dave@teachbetter.com so we can get you the direct link and get you in there. So I know there's quite a few people that are for sure dropping into that. So that's happening in about 8 minutes now. I do want to make sure that you can all get to your communities there. So Neil, thank you so much for joining us. Hedrick, thank you so much. Chris, thank you for jumping on as well. Really appreciate all of you. Everyone in the comments. I mean, there's a lot of stuff shared in the comments too, other resources, other ideas. We appreciate you. We're going to continue doing that. And if you need anything, please reach out. And, we will see you at the next one. We will see you tonight for Mastery Chat and stuff too as well. And the conversation may continue in there. And we'll keep going as the day goes on. So appreciate y'all. Have a good day.